Hey everyone, this is Red Robot, and today I'm actually really excited to talk to you about the Scotsman Skullcutter and just how good is this axe. Now, in my opinion, the Scotsman Skullcutter is a criminally underrated Demoknight melee, and it is, a generally forgotten weapon. You barely see this around at all, and it's a real shame because this weapon has some really solid stats, and it fits really well with the latest changes to Demoknight, as well as the other Demoknight weapons and the Demoknight mechanics. It hits really important damage thresholds when you combine it with the Splendid Screen, and it also rolls random crits, which makes it an amazing pub stomp weapon. I refer to the loadout I use with this weapon as the Demoknight. It's a loadout solely focused on doing massive amounts of damage, and that's kind of really what Demoknight was missing. I mean, after you perform your initial charge with something like the Eyelander, you really jump 65 damage swings after that, and you really can't deal with too much, especially with the changes to Demoknight, meaning you have to do a full charge in order to get a crit, instead of just the normal bash. This loadout consists of obviously the Scotsman Skullcutter, the Splendid Screen, and the Booties or Bootlegger. Let's break down the stats for each of these weapons. To kick us off, the Scotsman Skullcutter has a penalty associated with all sword type weapons, has a large melee range, and deploys and holsters slower. This isn't going to be a problem since we're using it as a full Demoknight with no sticky launcher or grenade launcher, so this penalty may as well not exist. Next up is a 20% damage bonus. This is actually huge and is really critical for hitting certain damage thresholds and works brilliantly with another stat that it doesn't have written on it, but it has random crits, unlike most sword weapons. And finally, when you got it out, this weapon gives you a 15% slower move speed penalty. That might sound pretty big, but when you combine it with the other weapons in the loadout, it turns out not to matter at all, and if you're quickly switching over to a grenade launcher to take out a sentry, you won't be slower for when you're using that, so that's helpful, I guess. Next up is a key component in this loadout, the Splendid Screen. Now, the Splendid Screen is actually pretty unique. In most cases in a Demoknight loadout, the shield is kind of boring and vanilla, whereas the melee weapon provides all the gimmicky and important stats. This is the reverse in the Demoknight loadout. The Splendid Screen provides so much utility. The increase of charge impact damage is so important. It allows you to take out enemies in one shot with crits or mini crits that you could never do with any other shield or melee weapon combo. Also, the increase of charge recharge rate is so critical and so important, and it partners incredibly well with the stats of the Booties too. Now, the Booties provide a critical role to the loadout. Reminder, they can be switched out for a grenade launcher if you desperately need to get rid of a sentry, or you're being constantly healed from long range, but the increase of turn control when charging is so critical. It allows you to get kills that you wouldn't even be able to get before and really make the most of your charges. The increased max health is useful, but not the end of the world. Melee kills refilling 25% of your charge meter is so essential. It allows you to go for even more charges than ever before and make the most of that turn control. And the 10% faster move speed makes up for the penalty on the Skullcutter, which is perfect. These weapons feel like they were made for each other. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about this weapon. Now, I see a lot of Demoknights are rocking things like the Pan, the Hamshank, and while I agree those weapons are lots of fun to use, you gotta think, is it really worth using them over the axe? I mean, the only difference between them is that the axe will have a tiny move speed penalty, which is made up almost completely by the Booties, but at the same time, you're losing 20% damage, which can be massive, and the increased melee range. I think pretty much any Demo Pan or Demo Hamshank or Demo Bottle would do so much better with this weapon, and I know I'm not going to convince people to put those weapons down because they are cherished and loved, but I do recommend that you give it a try and see just how much more effective you can be when you can roll those melee crits and have increased range with a damage bonus. It's seriously amazing. I've talked about damage thresholds a lot, and what do I mean by that? Well, basically, Demoknight runs into a little bit of trouble when it comes to enemies with more health than he can deal damage. For example, Heavies. Heavies will mow down a charging Demoknight in no time, and even if he gets close enough to deal damage, he's going to be doing what? 195 on impact and then 65 on successive swings. With this loadout, you can one-shot with a charge and a swing a 300 health heavy, and if that doesn't kill him immediately, if you've got some kind of overheal or some sort of damage resist, don't worry, you can follow up with melee crits, and they really shred through enemies. Now that the Demoknight system has changed and you can't get instant crits after a shield bash, it depends on how far you travel, mini crits in your weapon are more important than ever, and this weapon's mini crits plus its shield bash can one-shot a bunch of classes, including medics, which is really important, something you just can't do with the stock melee weapon. Even though you're going to be regaining charge very quickly with the Splendid Screen, plus the Booties refilling your charge meter on kills, this weapon is definitely the best melee for extended fights. If you're being Ubered in with an Eyelander, again, you're only going to be doing, 65 damage a swing, and then 195 every now and then. This weapon can deal over 200 in a random crit, and continue to swing, dealing more and more damage. It's really brutal what this weapon can be like if you're given invulnerability, or in a crowd of enemies that are unaware of your presence. It's really amazing. And I gotta say, because of this, it's one of the most forgiving and one of the most reliable Demoknight weapons when it comes to dealing damage. I mean, even if you screw up your charge, if you don't get that full crit, and you're only gonna swing a mini crit, or if you screw up your charge, hit a wall, you still have a chance to roll those random crits and do massive damage to assassinate enemies. It's really quite incredible. I mean, if you're gonna disadvantage yourself by playing Demoknight and not just regular Demo Man, this melee weapon really allows you to make the most of your handicap and actually do some serious damage. Now, I've been talking up this weapon a little bit, but I'm going to admit it's not without its faults, and every weapon should have weaknesses. To start with, if you're using this weapon in a competitive environment, although I don't know why you would be playing Demoknight in a competitive environment, you're not going to have your random crit, which is one of the biggest appeals of this weapon. That being said, it also has no kind of snowball effect. Weapons like the Islander will allow you to gain heads and health on kills. This weapon doesn't reward you at all. There's no gimmicks. It's not like the Claymore where you can get a tiny bit of health and your charge back. It's not like the Persuader where you can pick up metal for charge. It's very simple, very basic, but these stats are solid to make up for it. This weapon used to be great to use just in a regular Demo Man loadout. You could just pull it out and have an instant 20% damage bonus. Not so good anymore because it has the shield switch penalty, and also the decreased movement speed may stop you from juking enemies or getting away or getting that kill that you would have got with a bottle. So you got to, weigh out what's more important for you, I guess. In conclusion, the Scotsman Skullcutter is a great, reliable Demoknight melee. Yeah, it has simple, solid stats. It's got none of the gimmicks, but I think it makes up for it. It lacks the ability to snowball, and again, it makes up for that with its consistency. Unlike the Islander, or the Claymore, there's no damage vulnerability or damage penalty for putting it on. You're not disadvantaged at all from the get-go. It's amazing with random crits, making it a fantastic pub stomp weapon, and yeah, more people should use it. More people should try it out. Plus, I'm not even a good Demoknight. I barely play the subclass, and I have no idea when it comes to charging and the timing and how to do anything, basically. I mean, if an actually good, experienced Demoknight tried this weapon out, I'd be really interested to see how well he could just demolish a pub with it, because it's seriously amazing. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope I kind of opened your eyes to a weapon that you might have forgotten about, or a weapon that just needed, a little bit of time in the spotlight. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you right now. Had a ton of fun using this weapon, and I will catch you guys next time. One thing I actually forgot to mention is that if you can find a tight hallway or a corridor, Barnblitz has a ton of them, you can just completely own it and just destroy everyone in there. It's so brutal. Feels pretty unfair, actually. And in this situation, I had no idea what was going on. There were so many enemies coming at me, I didn't know what to think.